There is a moment in every battle when the outcome is decided. Not by numbers, not by firepower, not even by courage alone. It is decided by who understands the psychology of the man standing on the other side of the field. On the morning of January 17, 1781, on a patch of open pasture land in South Carolina, a 45-year-old man with a crippled back and a ragged army of farmers, militia, and frontiersmen faces one of the most feared cavalry commanders in the British Army. He has fewer men, inferior supplies, and a reputation for commanding undisciplined troops who have a habit of running from professional soldiers.
What he does next will be studied in military academies for the next 250 years.
At Lost Cities Revealed, we use advanced AI techniques to take old historical engravings, faded paintings, and hand-drawn maps and transform them into photorealistic scenes, bringing the past to life in a way that textbooks simply cannot. Today, we are walking you through one of the most tactically perfect battles in recorded history. You don't need to be a military expert. You don't need to know anything about the American Revolution, because at its core, this is a story about human psychology, deception, and how one man turns an army's greatest weakness into its most devastating weapon. Stay until the end, because the final move Daniel Morgan makes is something you won't see coming. To understand what happens at Cowpens, you need to understand how desperate the American situation is in late 1780. The Revolutionary War has been going on for 5 years. In the North, it has essentially ground to a stalemate. The British hold New York. The Continental Army is exhausted, unpaid, and chronically short of everything. So the British adapt. If they cannot break the North, they will crush the South. By 1779, that strategy is working. Charleston, South Carolina, falls in May 1780, the single largest American defeat of the entire war. Nearly 5,000 Continental soldiers are captured in one action.
Then comes Camden, August 1780, where General Horatio Gates, the hero of Saratoga, leads his army into a catastrophic rout against Lord Cornwallis. Gates flees on horseback. He rides 60 miles before he stops. His reputation never recovers. The British now effectively control Georgia and South Carolina. Loyalists, Americans who remain loyal to the crown, are emboldened across the region. The countryside is not simply a military conflict. It is a civil war within a revolution, with neighbor fighting neighbor, and reprisals running in both directions. Farms are burned, men are hanged, families are torn apart.
The British commander in the South is General Charles Cornwallis, intelligent, methodical, ambitious. His plan is to push north through the Carolinas into Virginia, cutting American supply lines and strangling the rebellion from below. But there is a problem. The backcountry will not cooperate. Guerrilla fighters like Francis Marion, the Swamp Fox, are bleeding British supply lines and making it almost impossible to hold ground. Cornwallis needs someone who can hunt these men down, someone who moves fast and hits hard. He has exactly that man.
Banastre Tarleton is 26 years old in 1780. He is well educated, the son of a wealthy Liverpool merchant, and by the time he arrives in the South, he has already gambled away most of his inheritance. What he hasn't lost is his ambition and his nerve. He commands what is known the British Legion, a mixed force of cavalry and mounted infantry, partly British regulars, partly American loyalists. They are fast, aggressive, and relentless. Tarleton pushes them at a pace that exhausts everyone around him, appearing where he isn't expected, striking before defenders can react. His subordinate officers both admire and fear him. But it is an incident in May of 1780 that fixes his name permanently in American memory. At Waxhaws in South Carolina, Tarleton's cavalry runs down Colonel Abraham Buford's regiment of Virginia Continentals. Buford raises a white flag. What happens next is disputed. Tarleton claims his horse is shot out from under him during the truce, throwing his men into confusion before a ceasefire can take hold. American accounts describe something more deliberate. The result, regardless, is not in dispute. Out of roughly 350 American soldiers, 113 are killed, and another 150 so badly wounded they are left for dead. Some accounts describe men being sabred after they have laid down their weapons. The phrase Tarleton's Quarter enters the American vocabulary almost overnight. It means expect no mercy. Is Tarleton a monster? Historians continue to argue about the specifics of Waxhaws, and the truth is probably somewhere between deliberate massacre and catastrophic loss of command control. What is not arguable is the consequence. The story spreads through the backcountry like fire. Men who have been sitting on the fence make a choice. The Swamp Fox's ranks swell. The brutality that Tarleton believes will crush American resistance has instead hardened it. And it is this version of Banastre Tarleton, feared, relentless, and absolutely convinced of his own invincibility, who rides toward Cowpens on the morning of January 17th, 1781. The man waiting for Tarleton is nothing like what you'd expect a military genius to look like. Daniel Morgan is 45 years old in the winter of 1781, which, in the context of 18th century frontier life, makes him feel considerably older. He is a big man, well over 6 feet, broad-shouldered, built for physical work. He grew up poor on the Virginia frontier, left home at 16 after a fight with his father, and spent his formative years as a teamster, hauling supplies for the British Army during the French and Indian War. He has almost no formal education. He speaks bluntly, curses freely, and has no patience for the kind of drawing room military theory that educated officers of the era prefer. What he has instead is a deeply practical, almost instinctive intelligence about warfare and a very personal reason to hate the British. In 1756, while moving supplies for the British Army, Morgan gets into a confrontation with a British lieutenant who strikes him with the flat of his sword. Morgan hits him back. He knocks him cold. Striking a superior officer is not the recommended response. His punishment? 500 lashes. At the time, that is effectively a death sentence. Most men do not survive it. Morgan does. He later claims the drummer miscounted and only gave him 499. "They still owe me one," he reportedly says. Whether that's literally true is beside the point. The attitude it reveals is everything. The British don't break Daniel Morgan. They make him angrier. He carries the scars on his back for the rest of his life. He carries something else from the same period, a musket ball taken through the back of his neck during an ambush that destroys several teeth on the left side of his jaw and exits through his cheek. He survives that, too, with a scar that stays with him permanently. By the time the Revolution comes, Morgan is exactly what the Continental Army needs. A man who fights not out of strategy papers or regulation manuals, but out of experience, rage, and stubbornness. He commands a corps of Virginia riflemen at Saratoga in 1777 and plays a decisive role in one of the war's turning points. But he is repeatedly passed over for promotion, repeatedly overlooked by Congress. In 1779, frustrated and exhausted, he resigns and returns home to his farm in Virginia. He comes back,
By late 1780, with the South collapsing, he cannot sit still. He asks to return. Congress promotes him, a little reluctantly, to brigadier general.
He arrives in the South just in time for everything to look its worst.
After Camden, Congress replaces the disgraced Horatio Gates with one of Washington's most trusted officers, Nathaniel Greene. It is a deliberate, sharp choice. Greene is not a reckless attacker. He is a strategist. He understands that the goal is not to win every battle, but to make every British advance cost more than it is worth.
His first decision shocks every conventional military mind of the era. He takes his already outnumbered army, exhausted, poorly supplied, facing a force nearly twice its size, and divides it. This goes against everything the military textbooks of the age recommend. You do not split a weaker force. You concentrate, you protect, you wait for reinforcement. But Greene sees something his opponents don't. Cornwallis's army is large, but it moves slowly. It needs supply lines. It can only concentrate on one threat at a time. If Greene gives him two threats simultaneously in different parts of the Carolinas, Cornwallis will have to split his own forces, and the resulting chase will stretch British logistics toward breaking point. He sends Daniel Morgan west with roughly 600 men, a mix of continental regulars and militia, to threaten British posts in western South Carolina and stir up the backcountry. Cornwallis's response is, in retrospect, entirely predictable. He sends Tarleton to deal with Morgan. Tarleton moves fast. He always moves fast. By mid-January 1781, he is closing the gap with approximately 1,100 men, British Legion cavalry and infantry, plus detachments of regular British infantry, including the feared 71st Highlanders. Morgan receives word that Tarleton is on his heels. He has to choose, run or fight.
He chooses to fight, and where he chooses to do it matters enormously. Morgan selects a place known locally, Elias Hanna's Cowpens, a large open pasture land in the backcountry of South Carolina, used by a local farmer named Hanna, winter grazing for cattle. The ground is gently sloping, open, and lightly wooded. There are no real physical barriers. Several of his officers think he's made a serious error. Conventional wisdom in 18th century warfare says that when you are outnumbered, you want difficult terrain, swamps, rivers, forests, places where cavalry cannot operate freely, where a smaller force can hold a much larger one. Hanna's Cowpens is wide open. Tarleton's cavalry will have room to maneuver in every direction.
And Morgan places his force with the broad river directly behind them, meaning that if things collapse, there is no retreat. But Morgan knows something his critics don't. He knows his militia, and he knows Tarleton. The river behind his men is not a trap for his own troops. It is a psychological anchor. Men who cannot run are forced to fight. He has calculated, correctly as it turns out, that the militia, given no choice but to stand and perform a specific limited task, will do exactly what he needs them to. The open ground is not a weakness. It is bait. On the night of January 16th, 1781, Morgan does something unusual for a commanding general. He moves through his camp, fire to fire, talking to his men, not issuing orders, talking, joking, telling stories, slapping men on the back. He is in significant pain. The sciatica that will eventually end his military career is already grinding at him by this point. He does not show it. He talks to the militia specifically, because the militia are the problem.
Militia are not professional soldiers. They are farmers, tradesmen, frontiersmen who have agreed to serve for a fixed period. They know how to use a musket.
But they have a well-established habit, when faced with a disciplined British bayonet advance, of breaking. It has happened throughout the war, sometimes catastrophically. At Camden, the militia collapsed so fast that the left flank of Gates's entire army simply ceases to exist within minutes of the opening volleys. Morgan cannot have that at Cowpens, so he does something radical. He tells the militia exactly what to do, and he tells them they are allowed to do it. Fire 2 volleys. Aim for the officers, the men with the epaulets, the men on horseback. Then fall back behind the Continental line. That is it. 2 shots. Then fall back. You are not running. You are executing a plan.
You have done your job. There is no shame in it. It is a masterpiece of battlefield psychology. He removes the pressure. He gives men a clear, achievable task with a defined endpoint. He tells them in advance they can leave the front line, so when the moment comes, it feels like a decision rather than panic. He also tells them specifically to aim for officers. This is deliberate and lethal. An army that loses its officers loses its command and control. It does not function as an army anymore. It functions as an armed crowd. By the time Morgan finishes his rounds that night, according to several accounts, his men are not frightened.
They are ready. One militia officer later writes that Morgan had the happy talent of making men pleased with their duty.
On the morning of January 17th, 1781, Morgan arranges his men in 3 lines across the gentle forward slope of Hannah's Cowpens. The first line, roughly 150 skirmishers, experienced marksmen, some of the best shots he has. They sit approximately 150 yards ahead of the second line. Their job is to open fire at long range, disrupt the British advance, and take down as many officers as they can before falling back. The second line, approximately 300 militia under Colonel Andrew Pickens. They wait until the British are close enough to see the faces beneath the helmets, then fire 2 volleys. Then they swing around the left flank and reform behind the hill.
Controlled, ordered, not a rout. The third line, roughly 450 Continental regulars under Lieutenant Colonel John Eager Howard. Professional soldiers, disciplined and steady. They hold the crest of the gentle rise, the last line between Tarleton and a British victory. And behind the hill, hidden from anything Tarleton can see from his position, waits the cavalry, around 80 dragoons under Lieutenant Colonel William Washington, a capable and aggressive horseman, and a distant cousin of George Washington himself. Tarleton arrives at Cowpens at dawn. His men have been on the road since 3 in the morning. They are exhausted. They have not eaten. Some of his more cautious subordinates urge him to rest, bring up his artillery to soften the American position, take time to survey the ground. Tarleton doesn't stop. Why would he? He has never needed to. The American militia always runs. He has seen it himself, repeatedly, at every engagement in the Southern campaign. He has 1,100 men to Morgan's reported force of roughly 800. The terrain is perfect for his cavalry. This is exactly the kind of fight Tarleton has been built for. He deploys, he attacks. The British advance is textbook. Tarleton sends his cavalry ahead to probe the American line. His infantry moves forward in disciplined formation. His 2 cannon open fire on the American position. The skirmishers in Morgan's first line wait. They let the British come forward. Then they open fire with a precision
that immediately signals this is not going to be routine. Officers begin to fall. The cavalry probing the flanks gets driven back with casualties. The British infantry steadies and continues its advance. The skirmishers withdraw, exactly as planned. From Tarleton's position, this looks like the beginning of what he expects. The Americans are starting to buckle.
Pickens walks behind the militia in the second line, keeping his voice low, telling his men to halt. Wait, wait.
When the British are roughly 50 yards away, the militia fires in near unison. The volley tears into the advancing line. Officers drop, gaps open. Then the militia turns and marches around the left flank, in good order, not a rout. They are doing exactly what Morgan told them to do the night before. From where Tarleton sits behind his advancing line, this looks like a victory unfolding. The militia has broken, the front line is gone. All that stands between him and Morgan are the Continentals on the ridge. He orders his men to press forward. They break formation and charge. The discipline that defines a professional army begins to crack under the excitement of what looks like a pursuit. They hit the Continental line, and the line holds. For the first time in this engagement, the British run into men who are not going to move. Howard's Continentals fire, reload, fire again. The British attack loses momentum. Tarleton pushes the 71st Highlanders forward on the right flank in an attempt to wrap around the American line and force a collapse from the side. Howard sees the Highlanders moving. He orders the unit on his far right to wheel and face the new threat. The order is misunderstood. The entire right wing begins to march away from the Highlanders, in good order, but in the wrong direction. This is not a panic, it is a mistake, but from a distance, it is indistinguishable from one. Morgan gallops across behind his line. He reaches Howard at the moment the Continentals stop. He looks at the men, then at Howard. "Are you beaten?" "No, sir," Howard replies. "Then face about and fire."
What happens next ends the battle in minutes. Howard halts his men at a position Morgan has already chosen, a perfect place on the reverse slope, sheltered, stable. The Continentals turn. The British, who have charged across the field in the belief they are chasing a routing enemy, are now 30 yards from a fully formed Continental line at point-blank range. The volley is devastating. At the same moment, William Washington's cavalry sweeps around the British right, coming from behind the hill where they have been waiting, invisible throughout the entire battle. From the left, Pickens' militia, which has had time to reload after its controlled withdrawal, comes back around and strikes the exposed British flank. Tarleton's army is now taking fire from 3 sides simultaneously. His infantry, which moments ago believed they were winning, finds itself surrounded. Some units continue to fight. Many throw down their weapons. The Highlanders on the right, facing Washington's cavalry and the returning militia, break. Tarleton tries to send his reserve cavalry forward. They refuse to advance. They have seen what is happening across the field, and they want no part of it. In less than an hour, the battle is over.
The numbers tell the story plainly. Tarleton loses 110 killed, approximately 229 wounded, and 629 captured. His 2 cannon are taken. His force, for all practical purposes, ceases to exist as a fighting unit. Morgan's losses, 25 killed, 124 wounded. Tarleton himself escapes with a handful of horsemen. William Washington pursues him personally. In the chase, Tarleton wheels and fires his pistol at Washington at close range, the ball reportedly grazing Washington's hand. It is one of the more dramatic exits of the entire war. What happens after Cowpens matters as much as the battle itself. Cornwallis is furious. Tarleton has destroyed his light infantry, the fast-moving strike force that was supposed to be the engine of the Southern campaign. When the news arrives at Cornwallis's camp, he is reportedly so shaken that he leans on his sword hard enough to bend it. And then he makes the decision that costs Britain the entire South. He pursues Morgan directly, burning his own supply wagons to move faster. Think about what that means. A British general running one of the most complex military campaigns of the era is so unsettled by one battle that he destroys his own logistics in an act of desperation. Greene, who has reassembled his divided army, leads Cornwallis on a race through North Carolina toward the Dan River. It is a masterclass in strategic withdrawal, never letting Cornwallis catch him, always just out of reach, wearing down the British at every step. The chase exhausts them and stretches their remaining supply lines toward breaking point. When Cornwallis finally catches Greene at Guilford Courthouse in March 1781, he wins the battle, but at such cost that he effectively destroys his army in the process. He withdraws to Yorktown, Virginia to rest and resupply. Washington and the French close the trap. In October 1781, Cornwallis surrenders. The war is over. Cowpens is not the reason the revolution is won. The revolution is won by years of sacrifice, starvation, and endurance by people whose names most of us will never know. But Cowpens is one of the pivots, one of the moments where the arc of the entire Southern campaign bends in a new direction.
Military historians compare Morgan's double envelopment at Cowpens to Hannibal's destruction of a Roman army at Cannae in 216 BC, one of the oldest, most studied tactical maneuvers in the history of warfare. But Morgan doesn't pull it off because he has studied Hannibal. He pulls it off because he understands people. He studies Tarleton and identifies his flaw, the belief that aggression and speed are always the answer. He designs a battlefield that appears to reward exactly that approach. He gives Tarleton's army visible targets to chase, the militia, knowing that a commander who has never lost will see a rout and charge into it without pausing. He takes his weakest asset, the men who historically run, and makes them the trigger of the trap. He tells his men the truth about what they can handle, rather than demanding the impossible and watching them fail under pressure. He gives the militia a task they can actually perform. They perform it, and the entire plan unfolds from that single act of realistic expectation. The battle lasts less than an hour. The preparation took a lifetime. Morgan retires from active service shortly after Cowpens. The sciatica is too severe. He has done what he came to do. He says of the battle, with characteristic plainness, "A more complete victory never was obtained." He is, by most accounts, correct. If you have made it to the end of this, I want to say something directly. What happened at Cowpens tells us something that reaches far beyond 1781 and the American Revolution. The idea that a leader's greatest resource is understanding the person on the other side, their patterns, their blind spots, the ego that makes them walk into something they should have seen coming. That is not just military strategy. That is something far more universal.
But here is the question I want to put to you, and I genuinely mean this. I want to hear what you think. Was Daniel Morgan a military genius? Or was Banastre Tarleton simply a reckless commander who was handed an impossible situation and made it worse? There are serious historians who argue that any competent British commander facing Morgan that morning would have lost, that the trap was too well designed to escape. Others argue that Tarleton's arrogance, his refusal to rest him troops, his decision not to use his artillery properly, his failure to reconnoiter the ground before attacking, those were personal failures that no amount of tactical brilliance on Morgan's part should have been able to exploit that completely.
I have a view, but I want to hear yours first. Drop your argument in the comments. Tell me who you think is more responsible for the outcome, Morgan's genius or Tarleton's mistakes. I will be reading every one, and I will push back where I think the historical evidence says otherwise. If this video gave you something, a new way of thinking about leadership, about strategy, about the people behind the history, sharing it with someone who'd appreciate it means more than you might think. Hit like if this was worth your time. And if you want to be here for everything we build next on Lost Cities Revealed, subscribe. We have stories coming that are every bit as gripping as this one. See you in the comments.